Oblivion Remastered dropped this week, and I'm still in utter shock. I remember when this game first came out back in 2006, our friend in the neighborhood had the only 360 in our block, so all the friends would gather together and watch him play Oblivion. And I remember watching him go into caves with swords and fight monsters, and he had this torch and would use magic, and it was something I had never seen before. I was still playing the Nintendo 64, and seeing our friend have this amazing piece of technology playing this crazy game was mind-blowing. But now here we are in 2025, and I'm re-experiencing that all over again. Not only am I experiencing it remastered, Oblivion being remastered, but I'm also experiencing it on the go. I'm literally playing this game on my Steam Deck, which just doesn't even feel fair. I think my younger self would not even understand the gravity of being able to play this masterpiece on the go. And it's certainly not wasted on me now. Having a Steam Deck truly has changed my life. I have access to so many cool games on the go. So when I heard that the remaster was potentially going to be dropped this week, I was anxiously waiting for it to be confirmed so I could play it on my Steam Deck. And sure enough, it was a Tuesday. I was at work watching the live stream, and then they announced that it would be available that day. So I immediately went on the Steam store, found it, and I was so happy to see that they're actually including all the DLC from day one, and at a really, I think, very affordable price given what you get. I think $59.99 for this entire game plus DLC is super fair, and honestly, playing on the go has just been amazing. So today, I'm just going to be fanboying over this game, but specifically in the form factor of it being played on the Steam Deck. How well does the Steam Deck handle it? What do the controls feel like? What does the game look like? All those things I'm going to be talking about today. Welcome back to the channel, my nerds. Hope you're having a great day. Let's get into it. The first aspect that I want to address about Oblivion Remastered on the Steam Deck is performance. Now, there's a lot of different ways that we can analyze this. Frame rate. I will say that playing Oblivion Remastered on the Steam Deck has been surprisingly good. Sure, you're not getting 120 FPS, but I will say the overall experience has actually been very smooth. Now, playing AAA titles on the Steam Deck, even modern games, generally you're having to tweak settings to get around 40 to maybe 60 FPS, and it really depends on the game. But Oblivion Remastered itself, it really was an out-of-box experience. I didn't have to do any tweaking to really get a smooth, enjoyable experience for this game, which is great because a game that came out on Unreal Engine, I would have expected there to be some tweaking to get it to be usable. For example, No Man's Sky, there's a lot of different settings you can tweak for optimal performance, but truly I felt like this was a genuine out-of-box experience, and I'm very, very pleased with that. Now, the other part that we can talk about is load times, and again, if you go through the tutorial, you go through different loading screen areas, it's actually very reasonable despite the amount of graphical overhaul that has been taking place on this remaster. Load times are actually very reasonable. And even though I'm running this game on the Steam Deck, the load times do not feel like they conflict or interfere with my ability to be immersed in the game. It's been a very genuine experience so far on the Steam Deck, which was one of my major concerns, was how is performance going to shake out, specifically because of my use case in playing almost all of my PC games now on a handheld. How is this going to shake out for this title? And so far, it has been great. Now, the other part we can talk about for performance is heating. Now, the Steam Deck in general does a pretty good job about managing its heat. There are some AAA games that definitely get it cranking. However, I will say, with the remastered version of this game, heating has not been a problem. In fact, the fans that came on during some intense combat scenes were very minimal. And I actually use a case on my device, and so sometimes I can hear the fans a little bit more than normal while playing other games, but I did not find that to be the case while playing the remastered game of Oblivion. So very pleased with performance overall. All of this really leads me to the next part of this discussion, which is graphics. Now, running any AAA title or modern game on the Steam Deck, you're not going to get levels of 4090 performance or graphic visuals. And that's sort of the compromise that you make because you're able to do it in a very portable form factor. However, when it comes to playing on the Steam Deck, this game actually looks gorgeous. The graphics are really solid. The shadows are actually really good for being in a portable form factor on the Steam Deck. I think the fidelity, the texture resolution, lighting, and effects, they're just solid. Granted, you're going to get a way better visual performance if you're using a 4090 card, for example. On the Steam Deck itself, it's been a very great visual experience thus far. The other big thing to consider when playing any AAA game on the Steam Deck, especially a new one that drops this year, is what does battery life look like? And this actually is where I got really surprised. I would have expected that a game this size, 120 gigabytes, 130 gigabytes of download, that this would have probably crushed my battery fairly quickly. A lot of the other games that I play that are on the bigger scale, I'm getting anywhere between maybe 2.5, 3 hours if I'm really pushing the Steam Deck. However, when I've been playing and filming this particular video, I have been playing Oblivion Remastered for several hours, often putting it back in sleep mode, resuming, shooting some more footage, playing some more, and I'm very surprised to report that it's actually withholding my battery percentage very, very well. And that actually is very encouraging to me. I don't have the exact metrics on battery drain versus hours played, but just from an initial gut check, I'm actually very surprised at the battery consumption. I did not think I would get this much playtime in one singular charge. So very, very pleased with how it's overall performing on the Steam Deck. Now, when it comes to Steam Deck form factor, a big conversation piece is controls and input. I will say that when I originally played the original game of Oblivion back in 2006, that the controls really felt meshed within the Xbox 360 controller. Now, you may have experienced Oblivion on the PS3. However, I really feel like the Steam Deck does a really good job about enhancing the experience and not becoming a barrier for immersion. What do I mean by that? So the buttons, the controller, the actual form factor of the Steam Deck actually allows me to be more immersed than I would necessarily playing with mouse or keyboard, for example. I really feel immersed in the world because of the controller schema. I feel like the buttons just feel really natural, and honestly, it's kind of a homage back to the original 360. The designs are very similar and their controller inputs, but it's been very, very nice, very, very tight controls. The combat has been really, really updated, and honestly, it works super well with the Steam Deck. Combat overall feels very tight. Even when using third person, I'm very surprised at how enjoyable casting magic is in third person, especially while playing on the Steam Deck. I've been very, very pleased with this. The other aspect of the Steam Deck, which is often and can often be a conversation point, is text legibility. Now, how does it look on a 7-inch screen? Sometimes text aren't always formatted to be read in that sort of resolution. I will say it looks great. Now, I don't wear glasses or contacts, and so I'm not having any readability or legibility issues, but just from a UI standpoint, it looks great. The text, the menus, they all work super well on the Steam Deck, which was another concern of mine, especially for some of the other games that aren't Steam verified. Sometimes menus and text, they just don't transfer as well as I would like on the Steam Deck, but that's not the case for Oblivion Remastered. It's really been done in a way that allows the user to enjoy this game on multiple platforms, whether you're playing on PC, console, or on a mobile device like the Steam Deck. It all just feels really dialed in. Now, I did mention Steam verification in my previous point. Currently, it is not Steam verified, and sometimes that can be an indication of different parts of the game not being accessible strictly through a controller schema. As of right now, I have not found any barriers whatsoever, and that being a barrier for playing the game fully on a controller. I've not had to use any of the trackpads or extra buttons on the back to actually utilize this game. It literally plays like an Xbox controller, and that's fantastic. So I would imagine that that verification would probably come through in the next few months as I do more testing. But even without the verification, the game just runs so well. It really has been an out-of-box experience. I literally downloaded the game and began playing, and honestly spent no time really tweaking settings other than my preference in inverting the looking up and down part of the controller preference, but that's it. Most of this has all been just strictly out of box experience. It's looked great, it's played great, and even though it lacks the verification, I do think that this game will get that official verification very, very soon. I mentioned the UI earlier as being a pro, and I'm going to stand by that, specifically when it comes to navigation of the menus. Again, some games that lack the verification, some of the menus, they just don't transfer well. They're not as accessible. They don't feel as accessible as they could on the Steam Deck, but I'm very happy to report that the remastered version of Oblivion actually has great menu access strictly using the controller schema. Navigating it, accessing it, utilizing it, swapping between different menus, it's all very intuitive and honestly feels and looks great on the Steam Deck. Now, when it comes to storage and file size, I will say one of the biggest criticisms I've seen so far online is the file size, which I believe is a little bit unfounded considering just how much additional content and graphic updates they've done for this remaster. I don't think it's actually problematic to be sitting at 130-ish gigabytes of download. I will say that that's actually kind of surprising. I was expecting a little bit higher than that, so I'm actually not displeased with the file size. I feel like that's okay. You know, we're playing some really big games these days, and I was expecting it to be a little bit bigger. So 130 to me is not that big of a deal. And downloading that to the Steam Deck actually only took about 30-ish minutes. Granted, I have normal Wi-Fi speeds. Simply set it up, downloaded it, bought it on the Steam Deck, and began downloading it. It was up and running within 30, maybe 35 minutes. Very, very pleased. You will see after you download it, the game will probably spend an additional 10 minutes just installing all these new shaders. So I did sit at a particular menu for about 10 minutes as it was installing and updating all of these additional shaders within the game. But again, very much an out-of-box experience. I did not have to download any additional tools or resources to make this game really just pick up and play, and having that be on the Steam Deck is just a beautiful experience. Now, the last part of this, which if you're an Elder Scrolls fan, you're probably thinking, what about mods and how does that work on the Steam Deck? So as you know, Skyrim on the Steam Deck both offers support for the Bethesda mods or the Creation Store page. You can utilize mods on that. And there are also ways you can actually use Nexus mods on the Steam Deck, which does require a bit of tinkering. So as of right now, I am not aware of a way to get that fully up and running on the Steam Deck. So if you're looking for mod support for Oblivion Remaster, you might be a little disappointed that there's not an official way that I am aware of. I can't provide you any tutorial yet. I would imagine that there is probably someone on YouTube that has figured it out or will figure it out, and that will cover those details. What I do know as of right now is that there are already mods on the Nexus page for Oblivion Remastered. And what I've seen so far is largely changing the color scheme for the game. They've added more vibrance in the green and blue and removed more of that dirty kind of muddy filter that's sitting on the game. Now, personally, my preference, I don't mind the way the game looks as is, but if you're looking for different fidelity mods, there are some different mods that have been uploaded. Now, there are also the typical anime dweeb waifu mods that apparently have already been uploaded. I'm not really interested in that, but there are already mods in the mod community being created and uploaded for this game. Again, I don't know what that means for the Steam Deck. I know that people have had really successful workarounds for Skyrim, so I'd imagine it's just a matter of time before we get some great tutorials on YouTube about how to integrate Nexus mods for Oblivion Remastered on the Steam Deck. But if you're like me and enjoy a mostly vanilla experience, you're gonna have a great time with this game on the Steam Deck. So in conclusion, I will say that this game, Oblivion Remastered on the Steam Deck, has been a gorgeous experience. Yes, it's full of nostalgia. Yes, it's full of great gameplay. This game got Game of the Year back in the day, but besides that, when it specifically comes to playing it on the Steam Deck, form factor, UI, battery life, all of it has been checking out really, really well. And it honestly hasn't even really been advertised as such. Again, it's still waiting verification, which I do believe will come soon, but to be able to play it literally day one, right? Literally day one on my Steam Deck, and it have a great performance experience, I am really, really pleased. So if you've been considering buying this game, and maybe you're considering buying a Steam Deck, I will say that this game and the Steam Deck go really hand in hand. You will have so much content, hours of content, and great replay value on the go if you decide to play this on the Steam Deck. So thanks for watching. Go check out my other videos and make sure you say hi to your grandma, and I will see you all in the next one.